I've been doing hair transplant consultations for 6 years, and I've successfully put through hundreds of people through successful procedures. And if I had to condense everything I know into 5 minutes for someone planning a hair transplant in the next 6 months to watch, this will be it. This is the manual to read before you embark on this journey. And let's deal with the first question, which is the number one question you should be asking before a hair transplant. How many grafts will I need? Literally every other important question branches out from this question. And if you're not asking this question, you are already making a mistake. And we're going to talk about why this question matters before choosing a clinic and why most people get misleading answers to that question. Now, let's talk about something interesting that you might have noticed, that clinics rarely give the same graft number. If you ask one clinic, it's 2,000 that you need. Another clinic, it's 2,500. Another third clinic is 4,000. Who's right? And the reason is there's no universal standard for graft estimate. There's not a set method where clinics follow to estimate your graft numbers. So they are all kind of winging it in their own way. They have different hairline philosophies. Density expectations are different depending on the who's doing the procedure. You've got all these factors, and we also have to be honest and say there's business incentives. If they can do 3,000 grafts for you instead of 2,000, then they're going to make more money. So they are more inclined to push you towards higher graft numbers. Now, let's talk about the Norwood scale, which is the cornerstone of hair transplants. For people who don't know, it's a method where you rate or you rank a person's hair loss according to this chart in front of you, which is the Norwood scale chart. The more bald you are, the higher your number. So you go from stage 1 all the way to stage 7. Quite easy to understand. And it's the number one tool that is kind of the most universal tool that all hair transplant clinics rely on. And the average grafts, to those who don't know, contains only about 1 to 3 hairs. It's not really that many. Another thing that is really important is the hair caliber, curl, and contrast as well. So curly hair, Afro hair is different from Caucasian hair, different from Asian hair, and the way they curl, the color even matters. Some colors give better impression of density than other colors. And density, a lot of people tend to think that, it's hard, this is very hard maths, that if I have 2,000 grafts, then I'll have more density than if I had 1,000. You would think it's that mathematical, but it's not. It's also visual. It's also the skill of the surgeon on how they organize and they place those crucial grafts. It's not just maths. Now, let's talk about hairline design changes and graft count dramatically. So this is a rough estimate, and this is more than the average hair transplant candidate. They won't even get this far in terms of their research. So generally we say if you are Norwood 2 to Norwood 3, anything from 1,500 to 2,500 is good. The grafts is good. If you are Norwood 3, at the vertex, 2,500 to 3,500. And if you are Norwood 5 and above, you are pushing towards 5,000 grafts. So generally, the more bold you are, the higher the graft numbers that you will need. I mean, this makes sense. It doesn't take a genius to work that out. But somebody who's, say, a Norwood 3 will have 2,500 grafts, which is at the lower end of this range, and look significantly better than somebody who was also a Norwood 3, who had 3,500. Someone who's had 1,000 grafts more, and this person who's only had 2,500 is going to look way better than this person. And that's why we say density is not maths. It's skill, it's visual, it's aesthetic, it's hair type. So many factors play a role. And you only will get that accurate assessment if you actually speak to an expert, not to some AI bot tool that tells you how many grafts you need. So we say here ranges depend on strategy, not promises or maths. Another thing that the average person off the street who dives into a hair transplant never even thinks about it, no one even talks to them about it. They just don't know, is where the grafts should actually go. Should they go at the hairline? Because this gives the highest visual priority. I mean, the hairline really affects how your face looks the most. Should they go at the mid scalp, where you get better blending and illusion of thickness? Should they go at the crown, which it's really graft hungry? You need a lot of grafts to cover that crown, but doesn't really, it's a low ROI, return on investment, doesn't really contribute to the visuals of your face because it's not part of the face. Okay. So tell me, how many hair transplant candidates are really having these types of conversations with their clinics? Their consultations last 5 minutes, and it's all about, this is your hairline, we're going to draw it here, and you're going to look great. That's it. And as we said, smart plans prioritize framing the face. This is why you need to spend a lot of time thinking very carefully about your first hair transplant. Your first one is almost always, your best one. Another huge mistake is people who plan for today only, because hair loss is progressive. I'm sure you've seen people who have had like 5, 7 hair transplants. People like, Wayne Rooney, Callum Best. They've had so many hair transplants, and the reason they've had to have all these transplants is because they were only planning for today when they were having their hair transplant, their first one. Because hair loss is progressive, it usually gets worse over the years. And overbuilding early areas limits future options. So if you throw all your grafts into the hairline, and then in 5 years you really, really thin up top, you've got no grafts left, you are done. And we always say conservative plans age better. The fewer grafts you have early on, the more options you have. So long-term donor management is key. And to be honest, clinics are not interested. Generally, they're not interested in your long-term donor management. They don't care. They probably have accepted that they're never going to see you again. This is their only chance to milk you for as much money as possible. And whatever comes after, you go and deal with it yourself. Not interested. And there's a few online calculators, online graft calculators floating around online. And quite often they're wrong because of just some simple common sense reasons, because they ignore the different types of hair quite often. They don't factor future loss, and they assume uniform density. Some really basic stuff. These are just marketing tools. They're not a replacement for seeing an expert, sending in your photos, and having that assessment done in person.